Good evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, December 4th, 2018 at 7:02 to order with roll call, please.
Betts.
Yes.
Kostler. Here. Cavelli.
Yes. Here.
Kraus.
Here.
Weinhammer.
Yes, here.
McAlpine.
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move to the public comment section where people are able to address the committee of the whole. Is there anybody here that would like to address the committee of the whole? We'll go ahead and close that at 7:03. Michael, you're up for a discussion of the 6-month budget review.
Midway through the budget year, in your packet is a listing of projected variances that I wanted to bring to the board's attention that I feel may impact the budget that we have approved. I'd much rather bring them to your attention at this point in time rather than getting to the end of the fiscal year and let you know that I see a potential issue of an account being overexpended. In most of the cases that I've seen here, the impact on the funds is an actual positive one. There are a number of line items showing positive differences. There are some showing negative differences. Probably the largest one that's out there is, on the positive side, is I'm showing a positive impact of $85,000 in income tax revenue, based on the fact of what we budgeted for was a 10% reduction from the state, and it only came through at 5%. In addition to that, the IML provided an adjusted per capita number, so I've adjusted the number based on that IML figure that I received as well. Without spending a lot of detail on it, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have, the impact on the general fund is a positive $14,500 in the general fund, a positive $12,000 in the motor fuel tax fund, $203,000 in the water and sewer fund, primarily from development and new connections, and $240,000 positive in the capital projects fund, based on a few projects that we will not be able to get to this year. I'll be more than happy to answer any other questions that you have.
To the positive variance, just to remind the board here for the income tax purposes, when you hear us refer to LGDF, Local Government Distributive Fund, that's the positive variance that we're talking about. If the state was looking to take back, or previously took back 10% of our income taxes here that are due to the Village of Cary, reduce that to 5%. We hope that continues where they don't take back any here, and we can budget more aggressively, I'm hoping, next year.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you
questions
for
for Michael?
updating us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now, discussion regarding a recent police arrest.
Thank you very much for, thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to discuss a recent incident that occurred involving our day shift and a response to a reported battery that was in progress. It occurred on October 24th. Actually, I think it was 12:02:58, but I put here on the caption 12:03 p.m. I want to talk about a couple of different locations here so I can kind of put context to the incident. The first, there's 4 stars on the map here. The first one is a retention wall by Westbury Drive near Amber Drive. That's going to be where 4 individuals are reported to have been fighting, except that it was reported as the rear of Dunkin' Donuts. So when our officers respond, they respond to the rear of Dunkin' Donuts initially, and then they learn that it's by the, I think they call it frontage road, in a secondary location. There's the rear Dunkin' Donuts, so that's number 2. Number 3 is the field near Georgetown Drive and Three Oaks Road, and that is basically where the individual that we're talking about was apprehended. And then 4 is the Goddard School, which is at 80 Georgetown Drive in Cary. I want to kind of put this in context, right? So I didn't realize that this video existed. We didn't know that this is what was occurring at the time. I found out later. So one of the individuals that was involved in this, involved 4 individuals, posted it on Facebook. So it kind of gives you an overview or kind of a flavor of the individuals that were involved in this incident. And it's only 7 seconds long, so it's not a very long, if it works. Oh, looks like it'll work. So there's an individual, the 2 individuals that are on the wall are brothers. The individual that's dancing is actually the person that posted the video, and the individual that obviously is taking the video is behind the phone taking that video. Does anyone need to see that? Okay, all right. But let me do this again. I want to try to give you a flavor of where we're talking about here. I want to stop it at a location here. That didn't work. The person in the black pants is the person that we're going to be talking about. He was arrested. We can talk about his name because it's all public record. The other individuals hadn't been arrested, so I will refrain from identifying them unnecessarily. But both the individual that has the gray pants and the individual in the black pants are brothers. And they use their names interchangeably sometimes. So that's something that, you know, our police officers are aware of because we have contact with them on a relatively regular basis. So I'm going to kind of go through a timeline in regards to what occurred here. It's not going to be verbatim. It's going to be sometimes summarized by me. I did all the transposition in regards to the how the individual radio transmissions occur, and I tried to summarize them because if I did them verbatim, there'd be a lot more slides that we have to look at. So, like I said, at 12:02:58, CCOM dispatches 4 subjects fighting behind the Dunkin' Donuts. At 12:03:25, which is 27 seconds later, they update that Iraq is being used in the fight. At 12:03:36. Officer Eyring, who's one of the responding officers, believes that these subjects might be involved in a previous call. That previous call was 4 subjects that were engaged with some of the Park District employees, and they had thrown some cones into the lake there, and they wanted them contacted for a trespass warning. So they didn't want to arrest it, they wanted them contacted for a trespass warning. So officer at 12:04:27, Officer Eyring arrives at the Dunkin' Donuts, and then she indicates that she can't locate the subjects at 12:04:39. At 12:04:57, CCOM advises that the incident is on the access road behind the Dunkin' Donuts. So at 12:05:13, Officer Eyring locates the subjects at Westbury Drive near Amber Drive. So that's where I wanted to kind of illustrate in that video where this actually occurred, because if you go there now, you could kind of locate it by looking at the slats that are missing on the fence. What I've provided here and from this point forward will be the route to travel for all the individuals that were involved in this incident. The individuals that were involved are the red route would be Aaron Pittner. He's the one that we arrest on a warrant, and it's a warrant for aggravated battery to a police officer. The Sergeant Sinek's route is black, and he'll be the third person to arrive in that area. 2 people arrive first, and that's Officer Irene and Officer Kelly. And then Sergeant Sinek shows up a little bit later. But I'll tell you that, as I indicated here, we get the call at 12:02:58 or 12:03, and we're on the scene at 12:05:13. I think that's a pretty good response time in anyone's book. So at 12:05:41, Officer Irene, says that one of the subjects is fleeing on foot and is bleeding. Now, that subject is the subject without the shirt on. Officer Kelly identifies the subject that's fleeing as Aaron Pittner, and then Officer Irene and Sergeant Sinek exchange some information regarding Mr. Pittner's clothing and his description. So they're going back and forth in radio transmissions. At 12:06:21, there's a report that a subject's running toward the car wash. At 12:06:45, Sergeant Sinek requests CCOM allow us to use the talk group solely. That means that we share a talk group with Algonquin. So what Sergeant Sinek does at this time is say we want the talk group. I would call it frequency, but now they're talk groups. But talk group for our sole use, so they take the McHenry County College and our Algonquin Police Department and put them on a secondary talk group, so we have the sole use of our talk group. At 12:06:58 or 54, CCOM transfers all other traffic to TAC 2, and Sergeant Sinek arrives in the area of the Thorntons at 12:07:58. At 12:08:01, Officer Irene requests wanted information on Mr. Pittner, and all the other subjects are detained. So there's 3 other subjects, and she asks for Aaron Pittner's information if he's wanted for anything. He's the one that fled. But understand, of course, that these 2 individuals use their names sometimes interchangeably, number 1. And number 2, there was a belief by some of the police officers that Aaron might have been wanted. So we knew that he was potentially wanted. Not everyone knew that, though. So Sergeant Sinek asks for a directional flight in regards to Mr. Pittner, and he asks, did he go toward the Hollows, which is near Algonquin Township, or did he go toward Route 14? Officer Irving indicates he went toward Route 14 on the sidewalk, and then dispatch reports that Mr. Pittner is reported near Marlene's Hair Salon, which is the building that's across the street from Route 14 and Thornton's, but in that secondary building that is near Caper and 3 Oaks Road. At 12:09:32, CCOM indicates Aaron Pittner is wanted on an arrest warrant for aggravated battery to a police officer and gives some criminal history information. So it's at that time that it's verified that Mr. Pittner is wanted on an arrest warrant. And then Officer Irene acknowledges and asks about the other subjects that she has there as well, and that's at 12:09:43. So at 12:09:56, CCOM advises one subject has order of protection, that's OOP, a gang caution, and gives his driver's license status. At 12:10:28, CCOM advises the subject is near the railroad tracks. At 12:10:35, Sergeant Sinek acknowledges and indicates he sees the subject and is moving toward him. Remember, Sergeant Sinek is between Thornton's and the Dunkin' Donuts. He's the route that's in black. So now he's going to go to 3 Oaks Road and go toward the subject, and that subject is now traveling from the Thorntons onto 3 Oaks Road.
Sorry, what's an OOP?
Order of protection.
Okay, sorry.
So it's a domestic order. So when that's at 12:10:48, Officer Irene leaves Amber Drive in Westbury, I spelled that wrong, sorry, and moves towards Sergeant Sinek, and Sergeant Sinek indicates that Mr. Pittner is near Georgetown and provides a clothing description. In essence, he says he doesn't have a shirt, he's wearing black pants. CCOM indicates that he's on the sidewalk near Georgetown. Now, at this point, I'd like to indicate that Mr. Pittner never comes further south than that sidewalk until he sees the officers that pass him on Three Oaks Road. And they're in blue, the light blue route. And that would be Officers Eyring and Officer Kelly. At 12:11:16, Sergeant Steinick provides a location update near the Aldi. And then at 12:11:32, Deputy Chief Nadenoff reports he's northbound on Georgetown from West Main, and he inquires about the wanted status of Mr. Pittner. Sergeant Steinick also requests confirmation on the wanted status of Mr. Pittner. 12:11:47, CCOM confirms the wanted status and provides information about drug and aggravated battery to a police officer, a failure to appear, and provides caution information. So at this point, I'd like to talk a little bit about what armed and dangerous really means when you have a lead entry. There are 3 caution indicators that are on a computer hot file wanted response, or when you enter them. They're generally done by means of a suffix. One, I believe, is -P, but they are armed and dangerous, suicidal, or suicidal armed and dangerous. There's the only 3 caution indicators that would be on a leads entry. What is done is when you see that caution indicator, you go to the miscellaneous field, and that's where you get all the other information related to that individual's cautions that the entering entity wants to provide to the police officer. Sergeant Steinick, at 12:11:56, he provides updated information or location and believes that Mr. Pittner doesn't see him. I want to, stress here that Sergeant Steinick now is on Caper. So he went on Three Oaks Road and he went down Caper. So Sergeant Steinick is between, not by design, by the way, but just because of the way it works, but he's between Mr. Pittner and the Goddard School. So he's traveling there. Mr. Pittner doesn't see him. Sergeant Steinick is watching him, and he's going to be calling for the other police officers to come to that location. I lost my spot. Officer Eyring and Officer Kelly report that they're near Three Oaks Road near Georgetown. 12:34, CCOM updates the subject's location at Three Oaks and near Georgetown, and then Sergeant Steinick at 12:13:14 advises the subject's apprehended and in custody and requests an ambulance. Now, what happens in the interim is that Sergeant Steinick went across Georgetown from Caper, drove onto the grass, and moved to intercept Mr. Pittner, who now starts running on a 45-degree angle away from Georgetown and Three Oaks across the field near Stryker. And that's ultimately where he is apprehended. The red entry here, let me go one more step here, is that CCOM is requesting, DC Nadenoff is at Georgetown and Georgetown Drive and Industrial at 12:13:26. At 12:13:30 and 39, CCOM is requesting the status of Officer Eyring and Sergeant Steinick. So what they're doing there is they're asking if they're okay. Interestingly enough, at 12:13:37, and that's in red and it's indicated in CAD, that somebody, a member of the public, advised CCOM that the subject was tased. So they're providing that information as well. There might be a little bit of a difference in regard to timing because the timing on the radio transmissions versus the timing in the CAD might be a little bit different. Might be, but not very much, but might be a little bit different. 12:13:42, CCOM acknowledges radio traffic and advises ambulance is dispatched. And at 12:13:50, Sergeant Steinick relinquishes the talk group, meaning that he now believes that things are under control and normal radio traffic can resume. So at 12:17, rescue is staging. What that means is rescue is staying someplace else until they're told to come forward. Sergeant Steinick at 12:17:54 says the subject in custody and to send rescue up. Ultimately, rescue doesn't come up. They stay where they're at, and they staged at Caper and Georgetown. And Mr. Pittner in custody is walked back to the Goddard School, in front of the Goddard School, to the ambulance and the engine that are staged there. So he gets close to the Goddard School because we bring him there, not because that's the way he was fleeing. The The CCOM again, this officer hiring request verification of warrant at 12/19/06, 12/19/47, CCOM verifies the warrant is in the cautions again. And then 12/26/23, officer hiring advises CCOM that the situation is stable and that Mr. Pittner is being treated by the Cary Fire Protection District. At 12/27/14, CCOM advises of another call and Sergeant Sinek responds, "What else you got?" And that was telling for me because Sergeant Sinek tased, he was the individual that tased the person that was fleeing, and now you have a couple of officers, Kelly Eyring, Deputy Chief Nadenoff, and Sergeant Sinek dealing with the subject in front of the Goddard School, and another call comes in. So where CCOM advises of a call on Westlake that's involving what ultimately ends up being the other three subjects, and they had approached a member of the construction crew over in that area. So, and this is where I go there because everyone else is at the Goddard School. So I'm going to Westlake because I'm coming from Public Works. I was at a meeting for the Metro lot, and I'm coming from there, and when they called the other incident, I go there. They also asked for assistance from the McHenry County Sheriff's Office. So CCOM advises the description of the subjects. I update my location at 12/28/44 at 14 in Cary Algonquin Road, and at 12/29/05, Officer Eyring provides the identity of the three subjects involved in the current call. I'm at the scene talking to the individual at 12/31/15, and I'm out with the complainant at 12:34. I'm in the area, and I'm out with the complainant at 12:34:14. And then at 12:35:12, Officer Kelly is released from the call on Caper and Georgetown and is responding to the call on Westlake. Ultimately, a McHenry County Sheriff's officer shows up there, and Officer Kelly and the McHenry County deputy go looking for the individuals in the strip malls in the area, and I take the information from the individual that's making the complaint about the three subjects that were approaching him and basically trying to entice him into some type of physical altercation. At 13:03:20, Deputy Chief Nadenoff goes out to the school at Goddard School to speak with school personnel. And at 13:09:26, I find the individuals in the McDonald's restaurant in the back of the restaurant, and we ultimately advise them not to trespass at the Westlake construction area, and we send them out of the McDonald's restaurant because they were no longer welcomed at the McDonald's restaurant. So, any questions in regards to my timeline? As you can see, it was a quickly evolving, very fluid situation, and the subject was brought back to the Goddard School. He never went toward the Goddard School on his own. He was going westbound on the sidewalk that is adjacent to Three Oaks, the sidewalk that's adjacent to Three Oaks, that's south of Three Oaks Road, between Route 14 and Georgetown. It happened that we had a department member that was positioned between Mr. Pittner and the Goddard School when he was calling the other units to respond. All of our department personnel that were involved in this incident had numerous contacts with these individuals. We knew where they were. The individual also had no shirt on, so it was obvious that he wasn't concealing anything. And department members that were on the scene at Goddard, that would be Caper and Georgetown, were approached by a member of the staff at the Goddard School and asked if they should have locked down, and our response was no, that it wasn't necessary. We had the individual that we were looking for in our custody. I just want to say that I do believe that we did a good job. I think that given the timeline that was explained here and now, that the incident occurs at basically 12:03, the subject's in custody at 12:13. 10 minutes elapses, there's a lot of coordination that's done, and I would challenge any other operations in regards to that type of response to meet something like that timeline. Number one, I thought our personnel did a good job. Do I have any questions?
Yeah, I would agree. I think personnel did do a good job. So how this came about is my husband, Chris Cavelli, actually took a complaint from the Goddard School of how the situation happened. I'll let him speak on that because he actually took the complaint from Goddard School. I then followed up with the village administrator, and when I followed up with the village administrator, I was told nothing really happened, it was no big deal. So I then passed that information along. It was nothing really happened, it was no big deal, because that's all I knew. When that information was passed along to Goddard, it was, no, we were sitting in the parking lot when this happened. We saw the police chasing after an individual. There was more to this. Then I found out later the subject was tased. Then I found out through FOIA there was warrants. So I wasn't given any of this information.
Can I ask a question here for a second?
Yes.
I was never asked that information.
Okay.
I just want to
So-
clarify too, we did talk, and I said when we initially talked, I needed to talk to the chief to find out some more details about it.
Right, but and then when you talked to me afterward, it was no big deal, because then I called you a second time after I had learned more information. And I said, I don't understand why this was no big deal when I'm in fact now hearing a little bit more bits and pieces of what had happened out there. My contention all along was, why wasn't even an attempt made to notify Goddard? So I get it, this happened fast, but at 12:09, when you indicate right here that Mr. Pittner was reported near Marlene's hair salon, and then shortly thereafter, it's confirmed he's wanted on an arrest warrant. At 12:09, why an attempt wouldn't even be made to notify Goddard? Children were outside that day, okay? Children are outside that day. Give Goddard at least the ability to determine, hey, we have something going on in the area that could be potentially dangerous, because at 12:09, you don't know how this is going to end, okay? You don't know it's going to end in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour. You don't know at 12:09, okay? This is a great situation to debrief and look at everything that was done right, because there's a lot of things done right. But whenever you debrief a situation, you always look to see and say, what could we have done better? Is there something here potentially that we could have done better? Because good to great organizations do that. And in this case, children were outside. Could we have said next time, can somebody call Goddard School and let them know there's a situation in the area? Let them make the decision if they want to pull those kids inside. If this guy did run inside Goddard could have locked that front door. It would have given them at least an opportunity. But they didn't even have an opportunity that day. And luckily, everything worked out great, okay? The guy was arrested. The police went home safe. That's a good day, okay? But what I'm upset about most about this is that when I tried to explain that, about just even making an attempt to notify them in the future, I would have been done if the response would have been, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. That's something we'll look into. But I was basically told, no, we did nothing wrong. And I didn't say, okay, that there was all these mistakes or anything else, but my contention is that Goddard should at least have been there should have been an attempt made. And if the call would have been made and he would have been arrested right after that, disregard, we don't have any problems anymore. But what if this guy would have had something? You say because he didn't have a shirt, he didn't have a weapon, he's got pants on. How do you know what's underneath those pants? And what if he did start shooting? Okay, you say an officer's there and a squad car is there, but it's not going to stop a bullet from flying. You have kids outside.
I'd like to respond to those two items. Is number one, they do keep the front door locked.
No, they don't. They keep the inside door locked,
Yes.
but the front door is not locked.
Right, but there's a barrier between the school and someone making entry because they have to let some people in, just like every other
A
school does.
glass barrier that can be easily shot.
Okay, number one. Number two, I had asked, did the teachers have the autonomy to bring the children inside? And I was told yes.
If they are aware of the situation going on,
But I will tell you that I don't know that I have any statutory authority. Now, I would tell you that we would try to keep them informed, But I don't have any statutory authority to lock down a school. I can advise them to do
Absolutely.
that.
And you know what? I wouldn't want to put that liability on you or that burden on you. But as a former school resource officer
Me too.
myself,
First
okay,
one.
I can tell you from experience that I have had a school close an entire campus when there's a threat even in an immediate area from a town over. But that threat's close enough that they don't want those kids to go outside. Here you have a daycare, a preschool. It's not even high school kids that can at least somewhat fend for themselves. We're talking about little young kids that are outside. And you know what? I think it's kind of just upsetting to me that you wouldn't even say, you know what, that is something that maybe next time we should look at as something we could potentially do. Because you know what if this situation just at 12:09 completely went differently? You don't know at 12:09. You don't know how it's going to end.
No, I don't at 12:09. But as it turned out, as it's resolved, it was 4 minutes between when they learned that information and when the individual's taken into custody. And even if they made that call, it wouldn't have probably made it to Goddard School before they're telling them not to lock it down.
And that's fine. That's great. Okay? That's fantastic. But what if this would have evolved into a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute situation?
Okay, I understand that. I understand that,
Because
but it
at
didn't.
12:09, you don't know. It's what you know at the time of the incident. And all I'm asking is that we just have some consideration for a school who was very upset how the situation was handled. They weren't even notified or even given that opportunity. So just as a good business partner in the community, obviously they're worried. They're responsible to these parents, to these children. They are responsible to that.
Well, and I understand that, I really do. But the other part of this equation is that our officers were there. They were trying to take this individual into custody. They were trying not to hurt him further. He didn't want to go with them, and they had people trying to film them or video them. And then they also had inquiries about, hey, what's going on? Now, if it was that concerning, I have an issue with people going to that scene. So I don't think it was that concerning as it relates to the scene and the control of the scene at that time. I understand what you're saying, I truly do, but I also think that I don't know what they did in regards to the children, if they brought them in or not, and that would have been their call. That's absolutely their call, and they had that opportunity to do that. But as soon as everything was stable, Deputy Chief Nadenoff went there and spoke to people that were in the school.
Okay, I appreciate that. I've expressed to you my concern. That was my concern.
I have a couple questions for you. At all times, there was 4 officers involved in this?
No. 3, and then
and then
Deputy
4.
Chief Nadenoff responds from, no, he's in back. But I believe he responded from the department.
Okay. And when you were given your,
I'm sorry, I spoke too fast. I was kind of,
did you had mentioned that somebody from the Goddard School had noticed that there was police activity?
oh, yes.
So shouldn't the business owner take their own responsibility to
And I
put
do
kids in
believe,
shelter?
I don't disagree with Trustee Cavalli. I truly don't in regards to this, but in this particular instance, I'd give the guys an A for doing what they did.
And I agree with you on that. We will definitely agree with you on. I'm saying we will definitely agree on that same topic, okay? Again, because I can look at the outcome and say the outcome was a good outcome, okay? But please understand where I'm coming from. At 12:09, we do not know what that outcome is going to be. And I'm just looking for the future, should this incident happen again. Listen, I think they did great. The only
That was
thing
very quickly evolving.
Agreed. And the only thing I would look at doing differently that I would suggest, and that I have just been trying to suggest all along, is just making even that attempt. And it may be something as soon as you pick up the phone call, the incident's over like that, disregard. But at least it shows a good faith effort on the police department to somebody like the Goddard School. Because if, let's say another situation happened around Briargate or Deer Path or the high school, wherever, I would assume it'd be no different.
Actually, we tried very hard to remember that the private schools are part of that as well, because it's easy to remember the District 26 and District 155 schools. But I assure you that if there was any issue, that the officers on the scene, very experienced officers. One officer was a 12-year MEAT commander that was in charge of the day shift, Sergeant Sinek, and Deputy Chief Nadenoff. If there was and he is very well versed in tactics. If he thought that there was an issue, I am confident that they would have made an attempt to lock it down. But we also had history with all 4 subjects that we had.
And again, I don't even know that this warrants a lockdown, but it probably warrants the kids being pulled inside. It warrants the front door maybe getting locked, so that this way they do restrict who comes in and out of there. Because at any point in time, this guy could have ran in that direction and tried to seek shelter in that building.
But the sergeant was between that person and the Goddard
But
School.
at 12:09,
at all
when they're at
times.
Marlene's hair salon, by there,
No, he's on 3 Oaks Road, and the sergeant is on Caper. Now, I can't tell you exactly where
I know,
everyone's
but
at.
at 12:09, you don't know what path he's taking at that point, right?
The
You know he's in that area, but
No, the sergeant knew where he was. The sergeant had eyes on him
Okay.
from Caper, watching him across the open field. So he didn't want to divulge his location. So he was telling the 2 officers that were responding that here he is,
Okay.
come here,
But when-
I'll respond there.
Okay, and once he sees the officers, you don't know how he's going to react, right?
Well, he did. He ran. That's exactly what they thought he would do.
Okay. Okay. Well, luckily, again, I've already said,
But I understand what you're saying, but I thought the guys did a good job.
and I
and
will not
I-
disagree with you on that. I think they did a very good job.
And that's probably more my concern, is that I didn't want these officers to be painted in a situation where, we just discounted the well-being of the children in that school, because that never, ever happened here.
From my conversations with Jake, I felt that you discounted that. Not that they discounted that, but that when I brought that up, that it was pretty much, the example that was given to me is there was nothing that was done wrong. This is no different than if a traffic stop went in front of the Goddard School.
No, I never said that.
Okay, this is the example that was
I
given
know.
to me.
No.
And yes, it was, because what I,
Respectfully,
Jake,
I was
what I
not
said,
comparing those two, Trustee Cavelli.
that's not true, because what I told you was, it is what the officers know at the time, and if it's a simple traffic stop and they don't know any differently, it's different than somebody who is wanted on a warrant where they have that information, who was just involved in a fight. That's
But he was a victim. We thought he was a victim, at least I did, up until 12:09.
okay.
Yeah, at least that's the way I looked at it, because I was listening to the radio. And it sounded like he was a victim until 12:09, when they first identify him and then get the responses from CCOM to say, hey, yeah, he's wanted. Any other questions? My apologies, I just got a little bit animated, but I thought our guys did a very good job in regards to this incident.
Mr. Cavelli, you needed to say something?
I'd like to say a few words, if that's okay. Thank you, Mayor and Board. And Chief, I would agree that your patrol officers did a great job. My issue is, biggest concern is you have command officers to make command decisions, and when you're in an active situation like this, you say that you thought he was a victim, then there'd be no reason to even go after him. If he's a victim, there's no reason to set up a perimeter and try to locate him and try to figure out what's going on with him. Our police officers do a great job on a daily basis, and I'm not up here to be critical, but I'd like to give the board some perspective from a parent of a Goddard child and a parent of 2 other kids that go to school here in Cary. And plain and simple, I wholeheartedly disagree that the school shouldn't have been notified. The school absolutely 100% should have been notified. There was another 911 call your officers responded to. And as you know, I sent a FOIA request for some information for some 911 calls, the radio dispatch traffic, and the police reports. And I've had an opportunity to go through all of those very tediously. There was another 911 call that happened earlier in the day at one of the parks involving the same group of individuals. I don't know if they were located at that time or if they left and they departed prior to your officer's arrival. But then the same group was involved in the second incident that happened at the Dunkin' Donuts. Your officers get there and the offender flees. Another 911 call comes in that he's running across Route 14. So you've got somebody that's described as being intoxicated, under the influence, clearly unstable. He's identified by your officers, who have had numerous contacts with him throughout the years, numerous arrests, including violent crimes. The aggravated battery to a police officer occurred in Cary, so he has a violent past. This is a violent fleeing felon, is what it basically comes down to. Listen, police officers come in contact with people all the time. that they say, oh, I know who that is. That's John Smith. He's no harm. Well, then they caused harm. You can't just rely on the notion that because you know who they are, that they're not going to cause any problems. Having a police officer in the Goddard lot, in my mind, that makes no difference whether or not they should have been notified. This is a fleeing felon. He's capable of doing anything to get away. That is what they do. That's why he is fleeing. Somebody was armed with a rock. At the time that I listened to all the radio dispatch traffic, there was no communication over the radio that I heard that said that this person was a victim. Nothing like that. So the officers had no idea that he was a victim or an offender. So that's another concerning point. When he crossed Route 14, it's very simple to call on the radio and say, hey, give Goddard a heads up. Here's who we're looking for. There's kids outside. The front door is unlocked. There's a plexiglass window there that slides open and shut. Somebody that wants to get into the school can get into the school. Somebody that wants to go over the fence where the kids are playing can go over the fence. All this comes down to, your patrol officers did a great job. They did a great job. It ended well. But what this comes down to in my mind is that the school should have been notified. They should have gotten a heads up, because if they wanted to lock down, if they wanted to say, let's pull these kids in and let's make sure the doors are locked, let's lock our plexiglass window in the front to protect ourselves, they'd have that opportunity. Because if this guy, who seems like he's completely unstable based on his past, the armed and dangerous attachment to the warrant goes out over the radio too, that was 4 minutes before he was apprehended. Any police officer is going to think, even if they don't know who he is, this is a dangerous guy. If this had ended differently, where he decided he was going to go in the Goddard because he was intoxicated or whatever he was, not thinking rationally, and he's just a bad guy in general, and he did something to one of those children, or one of those children were hurt, this would be a totally different conversation. Luckily, that didn't happen, but it could have. And I look at any critical incident, something like this that happens, as, hey, how can we make improvements? How can we do this better next time? There's always an opportunity to improve. And I'll tell you what, I felt like the response that Kim got from the village and that I got from the village, it was like blown off. Like, no, we did everything right here. And that's what's so frustrating to me. Had somebody just said, yeah, you know what, we looked at it and good point. You know what? We could do this differently next time. I wouldn't be here today. I had to get a babysitter to come here. It's not like I want to come here in front of the village board and have this conversation, but I feel like we were completely blown off, and it was like a non-issue when this was a major issue. And I'll tell you what, the community, they're never going to blame you for taking an extra step to keep them safe, but they will cast all the blame in the world if you do something, one little thing, where somebody's put at risk. And honestly, my perspective is, the kids at Goddard that day were put at risk, plain and simple. You know, looking at this path, he ended up overshooting the Goddard school. This guy could have done anything. I want you to know that I think your officers do a fine job. They protect us on a daily basis. We love having the police in our neighborhood. Everybody I talk to in Cary likes their Cary police officers. I ask you, though, as chief, to look at this, do a critical debrief, take a look at where there could be improvements. So if something like this happens again, hey, we have a chance to keep our people safe. That's why I'm here. On a side note, she's going to kill me for this,
Don't do it.
but I want to wish my wife a happy birthday. And I asked her, hey, what kind of birthday present can I get you? And she said, you know what, there's no greater present than coming to a Cary board meeting. So problem solved for me. So thank you all.
Yes, you may.
I forgot.
Well, Chief, while you're thinking, can I just add one thing, just a comment to the mayor? You know, I know you mentioned about Goddard School pulling the children in, and the only thing I would say to that is, you know, it's the police department that are experts in the field of safety, and they look and defer to the police department to guide them, to give them that, because they're educators or they're caretakers. That's not in their wheelhouse, so to say. Okay, so I just want to mention that, because again, I think that back to, I think the police department does good. I think they keep us safe, and I think the community just has that expectation to continue to do that. And I know the police department's doing that. There's no doubt about it. But just as a follow-up to that.
And I guess the issue that I wanted to bring up was the fact that no one asked me what happened. Now, Jake did, but I answered my telephone. So if someone wanted to call me and say, hey, what happened? I'd have gladly answered that phone call. And I tried to do that with the staff at the Goddard School and basically was not welcome in regards to that after it all transpired. But that's my issue. And, a complete investigation requires both sides of the story, and I was never afforded the opportunity to provide information that I had. That's the issue that I had.
And the very first thing that I said is, would the police department be willing to maybe go out there on maybe a Teacher Institute day or a day that they have a free day where you can kind of teach the staff?
All day. We'll do that all day. We do that at the library. In fact, myself and Deputy Chief Nadenup just did it at the library.
Well, teach them what to look for, when is it appropriate to contact the police, whatever the presentation would be, but to give them that guidance, I think would make them feel really good. Again, not in their wheelhouse. They don't necessarily know.
And that's where, I'm a big advocate of them having autonomy to make decisions, because I think that's important.
But we'd welcome that interaction, not only if it's Goddard School, but other businesses. Doesn't have to be daycare facilities.
Yeah, we'll do it for
I agree.
anyone. It doesn't. So, anything further? Good enough. All right.
Thank you, Chief. Moving forward, a discussion regarding the ordinance amending the Village of Cary Municipal Code relating to small wireless facilities within the village right-of-way.
Thank you, Mayor. The discussion this evening is to discuss a state law that was recently passed by the state of Illinois that regulates the installation of small wireless facilities within the state. Specifically, Public Act 100-585 was dubbed the Wireless Facilities Deployment Act. It was effective June 1st of this year. It regulates the placement of small wireless facilities, which are defined as antennas that are less than 6 cubic feet in volume, and the associated equipment with them is less than 25 cubic feet. Under the law that was passed by the state, it actually trumps our local zoning regulations. As any municipality in the state of Illinois, our ability to regulate land use regulations or decisions is given to us by the state of Illinois, and this is one area where they've revised what our authority is to regulate these types of facilities. So under the Public Act, these facilities are now allowed by right within public right-of-way. So any roadway that is owned by the village, utilities that are located in the right-of-way areas, small wireless facilities are allowed to install their equipment per the provisions of this act. And also the act allows the small wireless facilities to be installed on any property that's zoned for commercial or industrial property. So even if our zoning regulations currently would not allow that type of installation, under the Public Act, commercial operator or wireless operator would be able to install samples of equipment that are shown on this slide here within those zoned properties. So the 4 images that are shown on this slide show examples of small wireless facilities that have been installed in other locations. The top image is actually a wireless facility that is in the village of Cary currently. It's near the Park Plaza Shopping Center on Route 14, if you're just slightly between the Walgreens area and the Meineke properties. The other 3 examples are other examples that are found on the web showing small, very small installations that are could be within residential neighborhoods, in right-of-way or in industrial commercial areas. The draft ordinance, which is before you this evening for discussion purposes, is based off a Illinois Municipal League model ordinance that was drafted in response to these regulations. It went through a couple iterations through the IML to react to the changes that were made to the act before it was officially passed. But essentially, the ordinance defines certain definitions for words that are related to the act or the model ordinance as far as how to regulate these facilities. Identifies again where the installations would be permitted, and defines the application and permit requirements and the process for the village to review those permits and issue and inspect those installations. It also establishes requirements for co-location. So if there are more than one small wireless facilities that are installed in the location. It limits how many can be on a location, so you don't have a streetlight pole that has 15 wireless carriers on it. It limits it to 2 installations, and then also limits the height that that equipment can be installed. So the example here is a proposal that was actually reviewed by the village a few years ago within the downtown area. The village was approached by a wireless carrier that wanted to install a small wireless facility within the downtown core. Would replace an existing Cobra head light standard in that area. Under the provisions of the model ordinance or the ordinance that proposed, the height limitations would be lesser of 45 feet for maximum height, or 10 feet above whatever the standard height is for utility poles that are in that area. The proposal that was reviewed by the village previously would comply with the act as approved. So under current state act and then the proposed ordinance, a wireless carrier would be able to approach the village with an application to install the facility at this location. Basically streamlines the process for them so they don't have to negotiate or have discussions with each individual village that they want to work with. It basically streamlines that they have the same set of rules for every municipality they want to approach. Home rule or non-home rule communities all have to comply with the act. So in this particular instance, rather than going through several iterations with the village, if we have standards set in place for the type of light fixtures that we want to have installed in locations or utility poles, they would need to comply with those standards. In this case, if they were to replace the pole, there's a specific application fee that the state limits the amount that we can charge for that installation. Specifically, the application fees, so if a wireless installer were to submit an application to attach their equipment to an existing utility pole, the most that the village can charge for that application is $650. That's per the state law. If they are applying for multiple installations in the village, so if they submit an application for instance, 20 installations throughout the village, they can do that under one application, but we would only be able to charge up to $350 per location. So if there are 20 locations, it would be $7,000. In the instance that we had an example of downtown, if they were to replace an existing utility pole, that application, the most that we can charge for that would be $1,000, and then they would be responsible for the cost to install the new pole as well. And annually, if the equipment is installed on village carrier utility, such as this street light or another structure that we own within the village, we're only allowed to charge an annual fee of up to $200 for that. If they were to install on a ComEd power line or telephone utility throughout the village, we would not be able to charge that annual recurring rate. There are other provisions from the ordinance for pre-existing agreements. So if we have existing agreements with carriers for facilities that are already in town, those can continue on until the time period expires, and also provides provisions for abandonment of their equipment, and also for indemnification and insurance provisions to protect the village and users of the right-of-way. So staff recommendation this evening is proposed is to, from the committee of the whole, is discuss the ordinance, but staff is recommending that the village pursue the adoption of the ordinance so that the village is in compliance with the state act. Staff would also recommend that we continue to monitor regulations in this area, as the state recently passed this act, but the FCC is continuing to review small wireless facilities, particularly for the rollout of 5G throughout the country. So there might be additional regulations that might be passed down by the FCC that would further limit our ability to regulate these types of facilities in the village of Cary. And also, as Commissioner Reif mentioned a previous meeting, continue to utilize our Unified Development Ordinance for the regulation of other wireless facilities in the village that don't fall under the purview of this ordinance. So larger towers, cell towers, things of that nature would still be regulated under our zoning regulations for those facilities. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the ordinance, the draft ordinance, or the state act that's proposed.
Brian, most of it is fine with me. I brought up a couple of points with Administrator Reif earlier today, and mostly that has to do with the duration of the permits this says the duration of a permit shall be for a period of not less than 5 years. And I'm just wondering if we need to make it more specific.
That's a provision that's in the state act. Actually, the state's that 5-year time period as well. And basically what that provision, as I understand it, protects the wireless carrier for their investment for that time period. So that if any rules, regulations change after that 5-year period for electrical issues or, electrical codes or things like that change, there's provisions within the act that would allow the village to not approve that extension for an additional time period beyond that 5 years. If the equipment's not properly grounded or other code issues come up, 5 years from now, the codes may change from that standpoint. So, but that is a provision that's consistent with the state act.
So are we not able to say it's 6 years or 5 years flat?
It has to be a minimum of 5 years. So based off what my recommendation would be was 5 years would be what the permit would be valid for.
Okay. I would like to see it be a little more specific if we're able to do that within the law.
Can the village attorney respond to that, help explain that?
Well, you can either define it, it gives the discretion to the village if the direction that the board, you can say 5, I guess is the max, the 5 is the minimum and maximum, if that's what you want to identify in the ordinance to start. But you have the discretion to say 5 years, that we're not going to go beyond 5 as it is drafted.
And I guess where I'm going with this is that when that 5 years is over, Jake told me today that they're going to have to reapply, and it would be paying the same fees again?
No, under the act, they can actually replace the equipment without having to pay additional fees. So there are provisions. So if they were to replace existing equipment on a pole, they would not need to apply specifically for that collision. They can advise the village that they're replacing the equipment and then go forward with that replacement.
I understand that as part of if it's within their initial permit period, but you're saying if we give them 5 years and then 6 years they're going to change the equipment, there's no renewal after the 5 year?
No, the act allows them to renew up to equal durations. So they can renew for additional 5-year periods.
Right.
Unless the act has been repealed or there's other provisions that would limit their ability to renew those permits if something with the laws change. They're no longer compliant with village codes.
Okay, so we could limit it to a 5-year period, and then they would have to resubmit fees again to keep the equipment there.
It's not,
I don't think they-
it's not the new application fee, but they would continue paying the $200 fee if it's on a village pole.
Okay.
But as long as nothing's changed, they would not have to pay the application fee for the pole.
Yeah, as long as they're not reapplying. I guess I was considering what you were saying, that they would reapply if there was
It just seemed, I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to
Yeah,
ask
if
you.
there's I took it as if there was a reapplying that was occurring here for like another location, yeah, then they'd have to pay that.
All right, well, that's my feelings. Just maybe a hard 5 years on it. But.
Sure.
Does that help answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any issues with having it be 5?
No.
More restrictive, better. So is this all right to move this toward for the consent
I'm good.
next meeting? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And now about discussion about the village's potential use of social media. Are you doing this too, Brian? Nope. Run.
This was brought up at a previous village board meeting by trustee Weinhammer. Wanted to open it up here and get feedback from the village board. I think what trustee Weinhammer's request was to look at social media use within the police department. What I'd recommend here, if the village board is interested in doing this, that we look at it, not just in the police department, but do it village-wide, just for the public's benefit and reminder for the village board. Currently, right now, we utilize Textcaster for communicating with residents and businesses, utilize our village website. We also have the Cary News Weekly that is sent out here every Friday to residents, and then also special Cary News Weeklies that appear periodically. So those are the tools that are within our toolbox right now that we utilize. We've discussed social media previously with previous village boards. gotten feedback. Haven't decided to dip our toe in the water yet, but I was looking to get feedback here from the village board on the use of social media.
Jennifer, you want to lead this off since you asked for this? What are you
well,
exactly looking for?
The reason I brought it up is because I follow other communities' Facebook pages, such as Fox River Grove Police Department or McHenry County Sheriff's Office, Lake County Sheriff's Office, and they do a really good job about communicating with the public several times, sometimes throughout the day, on different matters. I know those are counties, so they're larger, but Fox River Grove does a really good job too. So I would like to see it here with Carrie as well. I think it can be positive.
What are you seeing on Fox River Groves that's intriguing to you? Just kind of what type of information are they putting out? Is it daily? Are they updating it daily, or is it just
Yeah, they're updating it very frequently.
what type of things are being posted?
I could have printed it out or looked at it before I came here. I didn't look at it because I just get a generalization of the other 2 and 3 that I follow. But anything from what's happening in the community to, something happened in the community. If you know anything about it, please let us know. Things like that.
Okay.
So.
Anybody else on this side have anything on social media? I'm assuming Facebook is the direction that what people are talking about. Twitter, Instagram.
I'm talking about Facebook.
Okay.
I don't do Facebook.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
He
that.
does
I
not
don't
do
do
Facebook.
Facebook.
Would you object to the village using Facebook as a means of communicating with the public?
Could you go over a few of the things that we already use? We have the Textcaster.
Yeah, the Textcaster, the village website, Carry News Weekly.
I think we
too.
could expand the village website a little bit more. I mean, I thought at one time I brought up the idea of like having a question on the website, each week. How do you think village pickup is going? Or, what do you think could be improved or something to kind of get feedback from the residents that way?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I want to go in the direction of a Facebook page for the village.
Yeah, and what we have done to enhance some of the communication, and I will tell you that the Coffee with a Cop, that was one of the big things that people want to see, is not necessarily, what version of social media, but some more communications in regards to different topics. Like we had initiated, I didn't want to speak like I was in Chicago anymore, but we had initiated a article related to like counterfeit currency or the IRS scams, and they really like that kind of stuff. So that type of thing we'd like to develop. And then what we did do is we changed what we do when we send out an alert. We put the alert now on our website. We have a press release section of the website that we can direct people to so they can see exactly what was released to the media. So we're trying to enhance it in that regard.
I think we maybe be talking about 2 different things here, a village website versus a village social media page versus a police department social media page. And they are interrelated, or they could be. But personally, I've voiced my opinion with this on you, Pat, that the police department could be better on social media, communicating what's going on.
No,
on social
I'm not
media.
going to say we don't. I feel like Trustee Kraus, though. You won't find me on Facebook. So.
Right. But the problem is when certain incidents have happened in the past, there's been nobody from the police department that's giving an official word on what's happening. And then the chatter goes on that social media page, and a lot of people get bad information.
And that's probably where I don't like social media, because in every instance, it's usually fueled by social media, or in the last incident we had with the high school, it was because of social media, and there was a misrepresentation of a message that then was, used as, it went viral or used as fuel in regards to that. So that's where we went to put the media releases on the website so that we could be, more thorough in regards to the descriptions that we give. And that is what I would like to see, is we have some vetted information that we can point people to, that they know that that's the correct information versus any supposition that's happening on any number of social media sites.
Well, and I guess maybe this goes more to just being proactive with the information with the community, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a Facebook page, but I know you've directed me that sergeants have, control, and they give statements to media on whatever is happening, but do we need somebody who's more in the forefront now to?
We do. We already have that. Our PIO, or Public Information Officer, is Deputy Chief Fillmore. So he contacts or has contact with the media very routinely, especially as it relates to our incidents that occur, that might be, we have to tell the media about certain things like arrests and things of that nature. And if they ask for a photo, we have to give that to them. But I think we're talking about expanding it to more of the public, not just the media too. So I agree with you in regards to that. We can do better. And to get back to what Trustee Weinhammer indicated, I've seen it both ways. I believe Lincolnshire only has one Facebook page, and it's a village-wide page. So, if that's the flavor or direction, I'll turn it over to Jay, because I didn't mean to monopolize this. I'm sorry about that. But, that might be a more of a way to do this. And our textcaster has the ability to link it to both Twitter and Facebook.
I think from what I'm hearing from you, Trustee Counselors, you're just looking at other ways, maybe not necessarily Facebook, maybe Facebook, but ways to get information out better to the public and try to improve what we're doing upon, whether it's website, whether it's Facebook, other tools.
Right, and not just information, but timely information, things that are happening in the moment. If there's another, supposed active shooter, that there's somebody there that can steer people in the right direction.
And we need to continue to look at ways to improve, improve how we get information out. As the chief mentioned, trying to put right now anyways, all of our press releases out on the website here, but getting back to the Facebook discussion, certainly if there's interest to break it up of, just police, I would think if we're going to do it police, we just do it village-wide, just do the whole town. And there's not any concern of, well, is this a police item or is this more of a village item? And it's just a one-stop shop for village information, if we want to go that direction.
I like the village-wide one because I think there's a lot of relevant things, especially that come out of Public Works, like when garbage is delayed or brush pickup. There's actually a lot of stuff that Public Works has going on. And I would have loved to have promoted the police academy graduation tonight. I thought that was amazing. I thought the turnout that you guys had for the department was just phenomenal. To get that many people to volunteer their time to learn more about the department, it's just a great thing to promote, carry on. So I would have loved to have seen that posted tonight and seen some of the people who actually went through the program and graduated on social media. So I like the village-wide one.
And just in case anyone's interested, we've been kind of doing a dry run, so it hasn't been widely publicized yet as we get used to it. But the Public Works Department is utilizing an existing module on our website, which is a little old school in the terminology, but it's a blog module. So we've been using it to start mirroring some of the posts we've had on our newsflash on our website, Carry News Weekly, Textcaster, and so forth. And it's built into our system now. It's Facebook posts format, kind of a similar look to it with the different items that we've been having going on. So like I said, we've been getting used to using it before we kind of roll it out in full force. And then we've also been, just Trustee Cross suggesting using existing tools. The same thing for the Metro construction project. Instead of a standard web page, we've ported that over to the blog style. Yeah. So you're seeing all the different posts and updates about the Metro project. One option could be utilizing this kind of mechanism for these updates, the official village news. People with social media can obviously share the link to our website directly to the blog pages. Not saying that it's the way to go. We're experimenting with it now, but it's just an option with an existing tool.
We're exploring other options here too. I've talked to numerous board members about, I'm not crazy about Facebook, and I'm concerned about the staff time and devoting resources to it. And we certainly can do that if that's the desire of the village board. We just have to readjust some of our priorities here. But if we do something like Facebook, I want to make sure that it's done right too. I don't want to just half commit to something, so. But if that is the interest of the village board to move to Facebook, we'll make it happen.
One of the things too that we talked about in other things that a few years ago, we were approached by somebody about developing an app for the village. There's a lot of municipalities that are getting apps that offer push notifications, just like you would get anything else. I wouldn't mind dusting that off again and seeing exactly what that was, because that was a very minimal expense type of a thing. The thing with Facebook that worries me is, in my fellow mayors throughout the county, some have it, some don't. The ones that have it wish they didn't. It's burdensome unless you have a staff member that's able to continuously monitor it. The problem that we had when we did maybe we do another workshop. Maybe Scott can give us a social media workshop that we did with Julie Tappendorf several years ago, where she talked about some of these different things and the problems that municipalities may face, like with some of the comments, if due to the Freedom of Information Act or First Amendment rights, you can't delete any comments that are on there, and you wouldn't want somebody that's angry with the village on a pothole or something or whatever, whatever it can be. We deal with all sorts of people on a daily basis, and I wouldn't want to have that be their forum to diminish the good things that are going on. If somebody's unhappy about one thing, that's a concern that I have. I've always been in support of having something like that. I think if we can have something that I've been told you can't, but a static page where you just push out information. For instance, if we come join us at the Citizen Police Academy graduation at tonight, and you're not able to comment on it, or about the various other events that are going on, that upcoming projects, alerting people, like next year, Eric's going to be pulling his hair out when we redo Three Oaks Road. That's going to be a great project, but it's going to be a pain in the butt. So, getting people to have an understanding of those things. So I understand getting the right information to the people that use the right tools. I mean, that we need to evaluate what's going to be the best for us. I know Jake and I go toe-to-toe on this a lot, but I have no problem with it as long as it's something that can be controlled and it's a good use of staff time, a minimal use of staff time. And we could delegate some, staff. We've kind of talked about it before. I'm like, who's going to do that? Like, I don't know. It's something that we need to discuss as a board if that's the direction that you want to go.
I think you'd have a few people on staff that would do it, right? Not just one person.
Yeah, it would have to be, absolutely.
I'd like to just do a little bit more research into it, because it just said trustee Weinhammer had requested social media, but just so to look at other, like Fox River Grove, and look at other municipalities around us to see what they really have and what they do. I think that would be a great thing. Also, at one of the meetings that Mark and trustee McAlpine was at, we were talking about, and other public officials were at this meeting too, and we were talking about our web page, and that we should have the schools list that on their pages at schools, so that people in the village know about our web pages. And so that'd be something so that people could go then into our websites and look at our blogs and find out a little bit more, but that they are all connected in the village.
Yeah, links. We were talking about having links with different ones to link to everything. And I think that's really the information we're all trying to say here. How do we get information out, as much information as we can get out to our public? How do we do it effectively? How do we do it cost effectively, plus, personnel effectively? I don't think we're in a position that we want to spend money. There's things we can like, and then it's a matter of, can we spend the money to do it? So we've got to see what some of it costs, but I think it's worth looking into. I'm a huge proponent of looking at that and setting up, if we're going to have social media, setting up social media policy, whatever we need to do with some of these things. If that's the way to go, then I'm up for at least looking into it, but I think we need to investigate a little bit more.
I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about the app.
Yeah.
And then also what, Chris, you were saying in terms of just seeing what's out there in terms of, I guess, Facebook pages. I do have a Facebook page, but I stopped going on it because I got enough screenshots sent to me that keep you up at night, so.
Agreed. So moving forward, direction on this, do you want to have staff look a little bit about what we can get through Facebook, or that, I know that there's a whole presentation that was given to us for an app that was very intriguing at the time. Look at that. Does anybody have any desire to do like a Twitter account kind of a thing?
You can do something where you put out one message and it'll filter to all the different social media sites. So it minimizes staff time. I forgot what that's called, but I know that.
I think there's some feature through Textcaster.
For Twitter and Facebook.
Okay.
Good.
That we would have the ability, like you said, just to push it out. to
That's
those
nice because
sites.
that'll minimize some time. And I think as far as like some of the comments, I think a lot of people would be surprised they'll police other people. And there are some things you can remove. Attorney Euler, right, about if it's like derogatory, there's certain things you can remove off of there.
Yeah, if there's vulgar language,
Yeah.
things like that, yeah.
And District 26 does have links on their webpage to the library, to the village, I believe. So.
Okay. You have what you need on that, Mr. Rife?
Yeah, I believe so. I guess the one final item I have or question for the village board, is there any initial feedback you have right now about, what we do of Cary News Weekly? Do you think that's effective? Textcaster, website, any initial comments on those?
I like Textcaster. I just consistency in messaging, just what warrants a Textcaster message to go out and what doesn't. And we've spoken about that.
Yeah, the chief and I have talked a little bit about this too, and probably would be worthwhile to have a policy in place for Textcaster. So appreciate that comment. Anything else?
I think the part of it's just still getting out. I still think there's a lot of people that don't utilize Cary, News Weekly or Textcaster. So it's, again, getting the word out, as we're becoming more and more paperless, right? We want to do a lot of things paperless. It's a little more challenging to get information out to people. And we also have I do think that we have a lot of people that don't do any of that. So it's a matter of how do we get them information. So it's
Right, the
it's
seniors.
multifaceted, so. But I definitely think we should be looking at it. I love the idea of an app. I don't know how it would work, but if there's things you can just turn on with Textcaster, that might make things a little bit easier. I think we should always be open to looking at those things. So I'd be curious to see what they
But to
are.
answer your question about Cary News Weekly, I get nothing but positive feedback on that.
Yeah, I do too.
There's a lot of information on it, which is great.
What about, have you guys ever explored Nixle?
I do get Nixle reports and emails and texts from.
What is
them.
Nixle?
I defer to the chief.
I think it's, is it Everbridge part?
They're connected, I
Yeah,
think they.
but we'd have to pay for that because
I
of
know there
their
is a
size.
process.
Yeah, and right now, our per capita is 11 cents for Textcaster for a year. And we've also talked about, maybe changing the way we use it a little bit more as well, and maybe expanding it. But that's to come in regards to further discussion. But yeah, I know some of the areas have done it. I think they might have gotten in before you had to pay for it.
I think too we always look at ways to better communicate with our residents and with the businesses. And the challenge too sometimes just comes down to the dollars, the apps and these tools that we have. There's a cost to it. And as we've experienced these challenging budget times, we've had to make some painful decisions. And our newsletter and some of these apps they've been cut. And that is unfortunate because I think the newsletter, specifically for that senior population that may not be on Facebook, may not go on the website, and that hits their mailbox, and they do review that information. So would like to have that, but it's just a reality of the budget challenges that we face here.
And I just want to remind everyone that we don't have reverse 911 anymore. It's not funded by the Emergency Telephone System Board, and that's really why we ended up going with Textcaster. And right now, there's about 2,100 people that are signed up for it, so it's starting to gain some popularity.
So what happens if, there's a boil order in place? How do you get the
Did you
message
just do
out
it?
for something like that? to like all the residents?
Yeah, for those, it depends on the situation. For most boil orders, they're isolated to very specific units.
Okay.
So a broadcast on these types of outlets would not be what I recommend for people that would mistakenly think that they were affected by it and had an impact to their water versus the very targeted response. So for boil orders, we do door hangers directly on the exact locations affected and personal visits.
Wow.
But that's because it's typically, like the last one we just had, we had a couple last week, but one of them specifically only hit targeted or only affected 4 homes that were on that system between those 2 valves that we had to isolate. And that is the case for most water main breaks.
So there's no potential like where you have hundreds of homes affected? I mean, would it be realistic for you to go hang door hangers on that many
Right.
homes?
Yeah, for water main breaks specifically, yes, the valving in the water system is significant enough that it isolates limited number of locations. Could it get into hundreds? If it did, we would probably have to expand how we do it, but we would still need to do one-on-one for those exact locations. Lots of other uses, though, more like I think some of the examples you gave for other public works, things that happen like brush collection, special collections, changes in garbage schedule, things like that, that are more global in nature for the village. Those are the perfect candidates for social media or enhanced digital outreach like websites and things like that.
Do you know if the school uses anything like Blackboard Connect or anything like that to reach out if there's an emergency notification?
I do not.
It's very similar to text-based.
Yeah.
It's text-based.
Text-based?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Yeah.
They do? Okay.
But you have to sign up for it.
Okay.
You have to go to the website,
Yep.
District 26 MD 155.
Yep.
And the reason why I'm asking is I don't know if we can partner something with the school where we can get the message out about the village. Because with TextCaster, my understanding, there's only 2,100 people signed up for it. And with 18,000 residents, there's still a big portion that we're not capturing. And I don't know if that's possible, if the school would even help us with that.
That's a good idea.
It's worth an ask.
I think it's worth asking, yeah.
Good. Any other comments on Facebook? Jake, you have what you need?
Yeah, we'll gather some information and bring this. Sounds like the village board would like to have a future discussion on this here, and we're happy to gather that info.
Okay.
Appreciate the feedback here from everyone.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss litigation pending or imminent, Illinois 120/2C11, and personnel appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, dismissal of specific employees, Illinois 120/2C1.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll convene as soon as the boardroom clears.